All right, let's get going. Hey, folks, welcome back. John Kelly, law enforcement life coach with your Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. Hey, guys, bringing a service to you today, and it's a service that it's one of those things, man, where you don't know you need it until you do. And so I'm sitting down with Doug Parker, law enforcement professional, 30 plus years in the business. And he and his team have developed the Thin Blue Defend app. And my abbreviated take on it is that it's an app that you use after a use of force incident that allows you to capture all those variables, man, that you may not think are necessary to capture. And it helps you plan your defense should some legal action rear its ugly head in the future. And so, without further ado, we're going to sit down with Doug Parker, and he's going to tell us about the Thin Blue Defend app and how he came up with it and how you can use this in your arsenal to keep you healthy. Without further ado, Doug Parker, good to see you, brother.
John, really many thanks for having me on here to spread the word to try to help these officers out, like you said, in their legal defense, whether it be criminal or civil.
Yeah, no, hey, my pleasure. It's one of those things, right? It's like insurance. It's like, damn, what's my premium? What am I paying every year? But it's not important, man, until either somebody hits your car or, God forbid somebody dies, and everybody's turning and looking at each other going, all right, what do we do now? And from a legal perspective, the Thin Blue Defend is kind of the answer to, all right, what do I do now? I was just involved in a use of force incident.
Well, it's just like I was still a member of the legal services that, are out there for law enforcement. 30 years, I never used it, but I had the peace of mind that if I ever got into a situation, I had an attorney at my phone call.
Right. No doubt. No, and it's one of those things that it's necessary. And the fact that we've managed to get along this far in this process without, technology driven, right? I mean, the technology leaps and bounds. And I just think that, this app and the concept behind it, it's so solid and it just makes sense. So before we get into the app and everything that it does, do me a favor. For those of you that aren't familiar with your background, and where you've been and what you've done and your, where you've made your bones, speak to that for us, Doug. And then we'll jump more into the app.
Sure. Thank you, John. Started my career, I guess, as long as I remember. My dad ended up being chief of police in Clayton County, right below Atlanta. And so as he was coming to
Atlanta, see, because I'm picking up like a New York accent. See, I'm not getting that Southern accent at all, sir. So you're not from New York.
Not unlike your accent.
All right, geez, all right, good enough. Good enough.
So yeah, he was we lived on a farm. That was, as you well know, back then, police had to have second jobs and still do.
Sure.
And so that was his second job. So we would out in a rural area of the county. And so instead of people calling the police, which may have been a half hour away, they would call our house. And so I've been out on many calls with him late at night, answering calls.
How about that?
And in fact, when I was in junior high, he took me on a liquor still raid and we got shot at. We came up on the still and they started shooting at us. So I guess that was my first being
shot
at. That. And so when I told my mom, of course, she's very mad at my dad.
Yeah, I imagine that didn't go over well.
Man, how exciting to be shot at. So it was in your blood, most definitely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that lit the wick, so to speak, huh?
Yeah, because I was good friends with Truett Cathy at Chick-fil-A. We live right near him. And so he offered me a Chick-fil-A anywhere I wanted in the United States when I graduated from college. And I said, well, Mr. Cathy, I told him the story. I said, just like your son's following your footsteps, I too must follow in my dad's footsteps.
There you go. All right.
So yeah, then got on after college, got on with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and for 30 years investigated all types of cases, which a lot of them were use of force cases.
So let me, I'm a little, I apologize for my not knowing. The GBI, are they like Florida's FDLE, where they investigate other the municipalities and the sheriff's offices as kind of an independent law enforcement investigator? Is that the role that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation plays in Georgia?
Yes, they're pretty much same like FDLE. We're a requested agency. In other words, the sheriff's departments would request us on certain cases to come in and assist them with investigations. And of course, use of force, they want an independent agency to come in for fear of, hey, we're protecting our own police, that type of thing.
Understood.
And so we would do those types of investigations. We're heavily involved in the Olympics in Atlanta because there's a lot of state property that had venues. Very much involved in dignitary protection. I was on a rotating call with Newt Gingrich when he was Speaker of the House, because when he came back to live in Georgia, he was not afforded Secret Service protection. So,
GBI picked that up.
Jobs.
Oh, yes. Okay, interesting. Okay, so you've got a career of investigations behind you, and primarily investigating use of force cases, because those are the heavy duty cases where they need that independent arm to come in and take a look.
Yes, sir. Especially, involving a police officer, very serious case because of the implications that may come from, the decisions that were made by the officer in taking someone's life.
Right. No doubt. So you've got all this experience and you're retiring, and, why Thin Blue Defend? What was the nexus? What was the catalyst for you to come up with this solution?
Yeah, I started working with those legal services again that provide for law enforcement, and so I worked with attorneys on officers who were charged with crimes in the performance of their duties. And I was working on one about 6-7 years ago in South Georgia. Young officer, been only on 2 years. I was called in about a week later to assist in the investigation. So I'm also certified to do forensic walkthroughs with the officers to ask those cognitive questions. And I'm walking through at night when this incident happened that ended up in the death of the suspect. And as I'm walking through the officer, I'm asking him, hey, what did you think when the car did this, when the car crashed, 2 people got out and ran? And I asked him this, again, the thought process, and he'd tell me an answer. And I knew what he had already told his attorney a week later. And so I asked this guy, I said, well, officer, I said, why didn't you tell that to your attorney last week? He said, well, I didn't think it was that important. After the third, I don't think it was that important, that's when it hit me, because it's based off of Graham Connor, the what was your perception?
Right. Yeah. Most certainly.
The entire event, every second. And so he just didn't understand what was important in his case to tell his attorney. The attorney wasn't there. And so that's when the idea hit me. I said, I've got to have some way for these officers to tell what's very important. And the law allows for perception to be told.
Right.
And get that out to their attorney.
That reasonable officer, right?
Reasonable officer based on the totality of the circumstances.
Thank you, brother. Sure. Amen. Hey, you know what? Can we sidestep for 1 second?
Yes, sir.
Graham v. Connor, right? It's a United States Supreme Court case. It's established case law. But we often see jurisdictions not following Graham versus Connor.
That's what the law is.
But somehow we've taken the reasonableness standard and a rapidly evolving and the totality of the circumstances away from how that officer's actions are being judged. And that's so problematic.
It is, but again, it's based off also Illinois versus Gates. That's where we got the totality of the circumstances. And so Graham Connor references that. And so we can take all that into account, and we must.
And I think that, so now circling back to the app, this is where the officer is given some guidance, is he not, on?
Yes, a framework.
Yeah. Talk about that for us.
Yeah, it's just, you can pre-load all your equipment in there, because we want to know the weight of each piece of equipment, because it was based off of this case, because the officer chased this guy for 3 blocks, in the middle of the night. And so we wanted to know how much weight the officer had on him, because as he's chasing, he had on, 12.2 pounds of equipment. The guy running had on running shorts and tennis shoes.
Sure.
And so we know through the physical factors with, how our body operates, that we can take that into account. That, I had this much weight, and so I don't have as much energy as this guy running.
I fatigued quicker.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a framework. It takes you through everything. You can take pictures of yourself, because I've been involved in investigations where the investigating agency has not done that, and we want the officer to be seen by an EMT. So there are categories on that, because whether it's just your shoulder hurting, it's not visible, but we want that documented, because in that case in Kingsland, Georgia that I worked, the officer started having headaches later. He had banged his head on the concrete, but no visible. And in fact, while he was on the stand, the prosecutor actually said in front of the jury, "Well, Mr. Officer, you've had 2 years to try to come up with a story now, haven't you, that your head's hurt?" And so we want that officer to be seen. So we go through tons of categories with drop downs, text boxes to document, and we ask those why questions. How did the weather affect your decision? So you can lock in the weather with one button. You can lock in your GPS location with one button, because I've worked cases that bodies, that fought in the woods,
right.
from the roadway. So we want to know all of that. And again, the weather, what the suspect did, what the suspect said, what the suspect did in response to your commands. I mean, we just want to, and we also know that I can shoot somebody 7 rounds, which happened in this case, 7 rounds in 2.5 seconds. And that's one justification. But you go into a taser, which I've worked a case where a suspect was tased like 7, 8, 9 times. Each pull of that trigger is a justification. So we want that officer to document the why on every pull of the trigger of a taser, every swing of a baton, every series of rounds of a firearm.
And it's so necessary, because I've had the displeasure of being on the other side of that, the officer filling out the use of force form shortly after a critical incident. And a lot of times, your memory, a critical incident, the way the brain works, it's funny. Sometimes we don't start remembering things for several days after. So does this app have the ability for me to go back into it, Doug, and say, hey, you know what? I was a hell of a lot closer to that guy than I thought I was. And so talk about you're not just filling it out and it's done.
No, in fact, once you do put information in, it's locked in. So you
Good.
can't go back and change it, because we didn't want officers, well, I didn't like the way I responded. But yeah, exactly what you said, the memory, things come later. And that's why most agencies won't interview a officer for 48, 72 hours.
Sure.
And so yeah, you can go, and we really want this to be used with your attorney, especially if it's a death case. I mean, there are basically three different types of investigations officers may face, but still use this app with your attorney on a desktop, not on your personal cell phone if you don't like it on your personal cell phone, even though that information is stored in an encrypted cloud that we don't even have access to.
Okay.
But yeah, use that to document. And yes, a week later, when you see maybe a sign that had a certain color in it, oh yeah, that car was, that color. So now I can go back in and input that information in at a later time that's time and date stamped.
That's excellent, because I think so often, the process is suspect of you adding information as it becomes available to your memory. Look, well, if that's what happened, why didn't you tell the investigator that night? Well, darn it, my brain wasn't processing that information that night. And so, if I had remembered it, I would have told. And so this, I think, legitimizes that whole process and supports the fact that if you're involved in a critical incident, we know certain things happen to the brain and the memory, and it takes time for memories to become complete. And sometimes that information, that information isn't captured in the first 48 hours.
Right. And that, again, that's why, does the attorney know to even ask later of you, 2 weeks later, you remember anything else?
Right.
About the incident. So good way to document this. And you put in your attorney in from the very start. So that starts the attorney-client work product that's protected. And then you send that information to your attorney.
That's excellent. And while we're talking about this, this isn't just for the use of the officer involved shooting. This can be applied to any use of force, can it not, Doug?
I developed it for shooting because that's the highest and most ultimate, and that
Sure.
is a Fourth Amendment seizure. You know, we write search warrants to seize something, and the search warrants are what, 20, 30 pages long sometimes.
Sure.
Now we haven't trained officers to write, and now we've made the seizure a life. Now we have to document it. We've just never trained officers on what's important to go in that documentation, because that's going to be first and foremost at a trial. That's what you're going to
Sure.
be looked at.
Sure. That's so important. And this is stored, like you said, this information. I use either my personal phone, not a agency issued phone.
Correct.
And
Because that's subject to FOIA, any information that's inputted. So now it is in a personal cell phone with a personal email address to even further that protection. And again, once I said, you put that attorney in from the start, whether it be PBA, FOP, legal defense, anything like that, that begins that protection.
right. And now, does it have the ability for my once I put that attorney in there, can he access my account now, or
yes, you'll be able to send an email to your attorney that will give them access to all the inputted information that you had, any pictures that you took outside of the scene,
right,
or any audio recordings, because we do the audio recordings because sometimes my little fat fingers can't always type text very well.
right.
So if I'm prompted to describe the suspect, I'd just rather hit a button. Hey, he was, had on these types of clothing, this type of jewelry, that type of thing.
Understood. Big jacket, whatever the description was. Yeah, understood. Sure. That's a great idea. That's great. So you came up with this app. You saw the need for guys to better document their involvement in a use of force. And so that's done. Talk to me and tell me about some of the agencies that are implementing the Thin Blue Defend for their folks, and then I just got a couple more questions for you.
Sure. Yeah. When I was developing this, the county that I live in, Columbia County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Clay Whittle was very instrumental in helping us. I'd say, Sheriff, I need 20 people to just click buttons, make sure all the buttons work.
Sure.
And and about the process. So it's very helpful. So we've got, I think, about 10 different entire departments, 10 to 15 entire departments that have signed up, because what you realize, even though the agency has no access to the information, what we've seen now is if an officer uses this, whether it just be wrestling somebody to the ground, you better document it. So they've seen that if they use this to document, now when they go do their official report that is compelled, you get a lot more detail, even in that report. So the benefits from these sheriffs and chiefs are seeing that, yes, I don't have access to the information of that one incident, but I know now that it's going to help in detail in the use of force report for us. And now that I can go talk to the public more intelligently about what happened and why the incident happened.
Right. No, listen, whenever we can capture, right, the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what we're after, right? We just, and if we can have it documented so accurately that at the end of the day, you cannot like the truth, but it's still the truth.
Right. And that's what we're after. And we realize if an officer did just totally wrong, the officer's not going to use that.
Right. Okay. And that's the thing, right? Because I think, there's a certain segment out there that would probably want to take this app and go, well, see, this is the way a bad cop's not going to document anything.
That's true.
I mean, this is to protect the good cops that are out there with a strong moral compass, that are trying to do the right thing day in and day out, like 99.9% of the men and women in this profession. There's no box on this app for political affiliation, is there?
No, sir, not at all.
Right, because it doesn't matter, because the truth is the truth, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And at the end of the day, It's just about documenting a use of force so that all the facts can be revealed, and you can hopefully insulate yourself against any kind of erroneous or political kind of persecution.
Right. And we've also have a section in there. If you see another officer just blatantly violating somebody's rights or excessive force, you can document that also to help protect yourself, because you may be a subordinate.
Sure.
It may be hard to tell a captain,
No
hey,
doubt.
stop that.
No, and we've seen what happened after George Floyd. We had some rookie officers on that scene who didn't feel comfortable checking a senior guy and saying, "Hey, enough, knock it off." And so now everybody's in the trick bag.
And had they just said, "Hey, that's enough," that probably would have helped. And so now, knowing what the app does, those officers may have spoken up at least just a little bit to say that's enough.
Yeah, no doubt. And we it's not enough for us just to take to monitor our own behavior. We are truly our brothers and sisters keeper, and we need to be. Sometimes we need to check each other, and grabbing a brother or sister and saying, "Hey, I got this, man. Go cool off." That may be the best gift you could give somebody during one of these scenes, right?
It sure is.
Wow. And so let's just say, Doug, that my agency, it's a big agency, let's just say, and they don't have the funds to go ahead and purchase this for everybody in the department. What if I wanted to purchase this as to complement, I've got a health club membership, I'm going to church, I'm exercising, I'm eating right, and I want to make sure that I'm protecting myself for any future litigation that may arise in the lawful performance of my duty. Is there a way that I can get this Thin Blue Defend app on my phone for my own personal wellness and peace of mind?
Sure. For departments, of course, we do a sliding scale depending on how many officers are within that agency. But yes, just individuals or officers can go to thinbluedefend.com, and I've got a promo code I'd like to give them.
Yeah, please do. And I'll put it in the show
10%.
notes as well, but go ahead.
Yeah, just Kelly Podcast, KELLY PODCAST, and that'll give them 10% off of the price.
That's awesome, man. Before we close, Doug, give us that website one more time.
Yes, thinbluedefend.com. And there's all kind of information on there.
Tons of information. If you want to do a deep dive, there's a place to contact you guys if you have questions.
Sure, call me personally. Phone number's there, email's there.
How about that? And so if you could, Doug, I'm going to put all this information in the show notes, and we'll put this information out. If you're a chief or a sheriff, you got a squad of guys, you're a set team sergeant, and you're getting people looking over your shoulder, and you want to do something for your guys and give them another tool to help them preserve evidence and be able for them to complete an accurate and detailed report. This is definitely a product worth looking into. Thin Blue Defend.
Can I say something about what you do? About your show?
Most certainly, sir.
I mean, I've been listening, and especially like with Meredith Moran.
Yes.
And the reason why this has come out, when I first developed this, again, I just worked with these officers. Well, what I've seen on the private side now is these officers are going through hell.
Yeah.
And so I realize now that I've got to have some way for these officers to get some help, because not only what y'all talked about with Miss Meredith, but also just the anticipation of litigation can weigh on. And I've seen officers now, because of that anticipation of being criminally charged, mainly criminally charged, they hit the alcohol, they hit the drugs, they're getting in trouble, shoplifting. I mean, I've been amazed at what I've seen with these officers, and for what you do, and Miss Meredith and all these other people that have these places for officers to get help. That I'm going to drive those people to y'all, because
Wow.
that's what they need. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been
Doug,
amazed.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And listen, at the end of the day, man, you and I, we didn't know what we didn't know. I did 30 years in Broward, and man, it was by the grace of God that I managed to still be here today. And at the end of the day, man, it's about leaving this place a little bit better than we found it, and helping our brothers and sisters that are still fighting that good fight, and giving them some skill sets and some hope at the end of the day. And that's
Well,
what you're doing. And I like to think that that's what I'm trying to do.
sure, yeah, you did, because we had an agent killed in our office in 1987, and the only help we got, or the only help we knew, was put our fist through the wall in the office. I mean, that was how we dealt with it.
Yeah, go grab a case of beer and sit out
Yeah,
in the back lot. Yeah, man.
and that's got to change. And through what y'all are doing, I mean, it's really needed. I'm serious about that. Not
Well,
just
I believe so too. I think that we owe it. We owe it to those folks that are willing to give their lives up for total strangers. We owe it to be there for them before they need us on
yeah,
the
because
front end.
they're making split second decisions at 1 o'clock in the morning with 4 people in the car. They're by themselves, and the public expects them to be right 100% of the time on a reactionary incident.
Yeah, no, that's quite a tall order.
It is
quite a tall order. And
It is.
and we know that if you've got other issues going on in your personal life, those decisions are clouded at best. And so it's going to take a team. It's a team effort to get this thing back on the tracks.
Yes, sir.
Doug, one last word for our guys and gals that are listening to us. Maybe they're on their way into work. Maybe they're on their way home. Something, it doesn't have to be completely specific to Thin Blue Defend, but just something that you'd like to share with them. Your 30 plus years of law enforcement and everything that you've been able to do in this career of yours.
Yeah, and it is based on what I just said. I mean, God bless these people that are out there making those split second decisions and then being scrutinized, months and years later, doing the things that a lot of people won't do, getting cussed at, spit on, fights, and yet they're out there doing it with a smile on their face. But yeah, protect yourself, do the things like you said, go to church, eat good, go to the gym, keep yourself fit in all ways,
right?
Mentally, physically, and spiritually.
That's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Parker, thank you, sir, for spending time with us today and giving us some information on the Thin Blue Defend app. I know it's going to help people tremendously. Thanks for your time, sir.
My pleasure entirely.
God bless.